In this video, I'm going to share with you 7 signs that show your marriage is breaking down. And I will not leave it there. I will also highlight what you can start doing to turn the tide around. So this video is about 7 signs that your marriage is breaking down. And even as I do that, just a quick warning that it's raining out there. So if you hear something, don't worry. Get what I'm saying, and that is all good. Now, the reality is that marriages do break down, and many marriages are breaking down at a very, very high rate, more than you can think or imagine, because it is easy to grow apart than to come together due to some factors that play in our marriages. And what you do impacts your spouse, and which again comes and impacts you back. Therefore, the 7 signs that I'm about to share with you are meant to be a confirmation that your marriage is not in a good state, and also just to trigger you, to start doing something about your marriage, because I believe that marriage is for a lifetime. And so you can start to do something and things can turn around. So the first sign is this: when your needs are not being met. So when your needs are not being met, then your marriage is likely to break down. And sometimes this may couple up with expectations. So you have some expectations, or you've had some expectations, and these again are not being met by your spouse. However, I want to stick to needs, because whenever what I'm going to discuss about needs applies also to expectations. But I want to focus on needs because that is what is in the Bible, is in God's design as far as the husband and the wife are concerned in marriage. And so, when your needs are not being met, you will see that, your marriage is not interdependent. Let me put it this way. Um, when your needs are not being met, then your marriage is likely to break down, because marriage is about interdependence. That is how God designed marriage, that your spouse should meet your needs and you should meet the needs of your spouse. When I look at Ephesians chapter 5, verse 33, which is really a summary statement of Ephesians chapter 5, all the way from verse 22 to 32, Paul reveals a very interesting thing, that a husband should love his wife as himself, and a wife should respect her husband. And so for me, I know there is the book, His Needs, Her Needs, but I want to stick to this, and then I'll move to the book even as I do that. That these are the measure. This is how God designed, marriage. This is how God designed the man and the woman, the husband and the wife, as far as marriage is concerned. So if you are the husband, then you are in need of respect from your wife. So when your wife is not respecting you, that will be a problem. Your needs will not be met. You need to know that your wife honors you, reveres you at all times, because as the Bible says, you are the head of her. And another thing that Dr. Wheeler talks about is that peace and quiet. So these, I believe, go hand in hand with respect, the respect that you should receive, and of course, again, admiration also comes to mind as far as whatever Dr. Wheeler wrote about his needs, her needs. And then again, the interesting thing about respect, the word that is translated respect, in the Greek, it is phobos. And if you just think about phobos, it is closely related to phobia. And phobia has to do with fear. So, respect has an element of fear. And so, when we say I respect God, it simply means I fear God. So, again, respect has that element, and it is important that you work on it, you think about it in that manner. Additionally, if you are a wife who is listening to me right now, then you are in need of love from your husband. You need to be loved in a sacrificial manner by your husband, just like, and Paul says, just like, Christ loved the church. And how your husband loves himself. There's an interesting term for that kind of love: self-love, philesia, philosia, something like that. You can Google and find out more about it. But that talks about self-love. So when self-love is right, loving your spouse, will not be an issue. So again, you are a wife, you are in need of that kind of love. And Dr. Willard again, captured it very well when he says that, as a woman, you need affection, and affection is, part of love. Cherishing, you need to be cherished. And of course, again, you need intimate conversation. There are other needs there which you can look at, but mine was to stick to what Paul reveals in Ephesians chapter 5, and of course, allude to what other people have been able to come up with. And so, in a nutshell, marriage was created by God, and therefore we have to do marriage God's way. You have to do marriage God's way. And this is not easy work, it is hard work. Because without doing this, then, your marriage is likely to struggle. And I also want to encourage you that God's grace is available and sufficient to you, just so that you can be able to work on your marriage. When I look at Proverbs chapter 24, verse 3 to 7, it talks about how, when you are well informed, and that renewal, comes from the Bible. That renewal comes from how God enables you to apply what is in his word to your marriage. Then you will be able to establish a home. So you can look at that and just pray to God to be able to bring about that wisdom to you. Even as I talk about that, just a quick reminder: please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to share the video and give it a thumbs up or like it. Now, number two, when you take your spouse for granted, then your marriage will likely break down. And this is because, your needs are not being met. So if your needs are not being met, you are not meeting your spouse's needs, then it means that you are taking each other for granted. And when you take each other for granted, you will discover that you will be preoccupied with other things. There are other things that take up the time and the space that your spouse could have taken or should be taking. These are things like children. So you will overdo on the children, you will overdo on the career, you will overdo on the domestic duties and responsibilities. You will be online, on social media, a big chunk of your time. And sometimes you can find yourself even getting involved with other people other than your spouse. I'm talking about cheating, infidelity, but I'm going to talk about it later in detail. And this is mostly as a replacement or just a way of avoidance. You're avoiding your spouse, or you are replacing your spouse with something else. Additionally, when you don't involve your spouse and you also maintain high levels of privacy, secrecy here, I'm talking about, then you will for sure be taking your spouse for granted. And these things do point, of course, to a communication breakdown. So, what is important here is to turn things around. You just need to understand that your marriage and your family, by extension, are the second most important thing in your life. So after God comes marriage, and marriage, of course, is what results into family, and family is the design of God, just as marriage is the design of God. So all you need to do is just prioritize your spouse by putting him or her first as far as the earthly things are concerned, the issues of marriage and family, and you will be okay. Also, openness is very, very important. And don't let anything steal your time and the space of your spouse from you. Number three, when you and your spouse become roommates, then your marriage is likely to break down, because the roommate syndrome is actually facilitated by unmet needs, which we have looked at, and taking each other for granted. So you can see these factors, these signs are actually related. They are cousins, they are neighbors, they are friends. And so when you have become roommates, your marriage will lack the intimacy that is supposed to be there. And of course, you and the spouse will not be able to spend quality time. And how you can turn things around here: you just need to be intentional about spending quality time with your spouse And of course, even as you spend quality time with your spouse, you need to be curious. There are simple things that sometimes we don't do, like asking even your spouse, how was your day, and those kinds of things. That's how you spend quality time. As you do that, you ask those questions. You are curious about things in their life, because remember, marriage is about growing together. So when we don't grow together, we grow apart, because at the end of the day, we are growing. So the big issue here is to make sure that we are growing together. And even as I talk about, spending quality time together, there is also the issue of just promoting intimacy between you and your spouse. And of course, when arguments do come up, don't get stuck in the content of the same, but you need to be able to just get the perspectives and come together and be able to iron out those things. Again, I'm reminding you, please make sure that you subscribe, make sure that you share, and you give this video a thumbs up. Number 4, when you become lonely. So again, you are in marriage, which is supposed to be a companionship, but you are lonely, then your marriage is likely to break down. And this is facilitated by the things that I've already talked about this far. So the only disturbing thing is that this loneliness can actually breed, the spirit of rejection. And when rejection comes in, then a lot of negative or toxic factors then do come into play. Nevertheless, to turn things around, it is important to always remember that marriage is for companionship. So you have not married that person just to be there to fill the house and feel other things, but you married that person because there was the idea of companionship at the back of your mind. And that is why a husband and a wife, a man and a woman, come together in holy matrimony so that they can become one. Number 5, when you don't have your spouse's back, then your marriage can break down. And when you have already taken each other for granted, why shouldn't why should you cover each other's back? So you will find that you don't cover your spouse's back, or your spouse doesn't cover your back, and therefore you are left vulnerable to attacks from outsiders, especially in-laws. Sometimes you could have very interesting in-laws, and when your spouse doesn't protect you, or you don't protect them, then you will have opened the gates for those kinds of attacks to come in. So you and your spouse are the first line of defense to each other. So don't take sides with your in-laws, but make sure you take sides with your spouse. And even if you're wrong, you can always discuss it behind closed doors and agree, on this one you are wrong, but I had to take your side, and next time let us be more wise. Number 6, when your spouse's weaknesses or shortcomings become pronounced. So again, this can lead to a breakdown in your marriage, and this is because your spouse's weaknesses and shortcomings, when they become conspicuous, when they become pronounced, this is not healthy. A healthy marriage is where weaknesses are not pronounced, and of course, again, shortcomings are not conspicuous. Therefore, to turn things around, it is important for you to aim to have a healthy marriage, and that is, when you have a healthy marriage, a working marriage, a marriage that is not breaking down, then you will be able, to not even notice those weaknesses. They just become the good thing, the part of the marriage. And we continue. Finally, I said I would share 7 things. When your partner gets involved in an affair, oh my God, this is big. Then of course your marriage can break down, because even the Bible provides a clear path for divorce, because a breakdown will lead to a divorce. If a marriage that is breaking down is not taken care of, things are not done to reverse the trend, then the ultimate point of it is separation and divorce. And so when your partner gets involved in an affair, this is really big, because many people consider this as the highest form of being let down. And of course, only forgiveness and God and willingness to work things and overcome the situation can be able to restore things and enable you and your spouse to move to another level. So I don't want to downplay this. I am also saying this is the grounds for divorce, biblical grounds, and I know it is huge, and it is not easy when your trust is broken, or when you break your spouse's trust. So only God, and the graces of the Spirit can be able to save such a situation, or such a marriage from complete breakdown. But you have to be both willing to work on it, so that it is a team. The Bible says that whatever two agree on earth, then it is so in heaven. Two cannot walk together unless they are in agreement. So in closing, I want to say this, that it is important for you to appreciate that marriage was created by God, and you know you just have to do it God's way. It's the same way you go into a shop, you buy an electronic item, they will always have the manual on top of everything. So you open up the box, there is the manual, so that you can go through and understand how to use the electronic device. So in this case, God, instituted this, and therefore it is for us to be able to find out His design for this was exactly what, and be able to live that. And that's why I was talking about Proverbs. The Proverbs verse, that is Proverbs chapter 24, so that we can be able to value knowledge. Verse 3 to 7, that we need wisdom. Wisdom is application of knowledge, and we will be in a better place. And of course, even as He has given us this manual, it is hard work. So it is not going to be easy work, but it is doable. And again, God provides His grace, so that we can be empowered to do that which He expects us. Otherwise, you and me will struggle if you don't do that. So it is about, and when marriage succeeds, it glorifies God. God wants to be glorified through your marriage. So it is important that you are able to have a healthy marriage, a working marriage, a marriage that is not breaking down. So being aware of the issues in your marriage, and just being able to show your spouse that you are aware of these issues, you are willing to work on those issues, and your spouse is also willing to do the same, is in the same disposition, then of course, you also show that you are willing to change, to work on it, then your marriage will succeed. And of course, it is important to see issues from each other's perspective. So you see issues from your perspective, and your spouse sees issues from their perspective. So I'm sharing all this so that you can have a successful marriage. I believe in marriage. I believe in marriage for life. And I know that God instituted something good, and we can be the best that we can be in God and through God. So may God bless your marriage. If you are, this any of these signs, or some of these signs, or all of these signs are there, don't lose hope. You can turn things around. I've shared some tips there as I was going through that, but I will also have one of these fine days when God gives me the grace, just how you can turn around things, even if it is the deadly one, an affair. With all that, God bless you, and see you in the next video. Thank you.